Let's meet someone who started their business at the age of just 9 years old. I'm Kate Save. The Inspired CEO starts now. Welcome to The Inspired CEO, where each episode we explore the innovative wellness practices that are driving success and longevity in the modern business world. In this episode, we chat with Josh Murray, who founded Josh's Rainbow Eggs at age 9 with 40 hens. Now, his free-range eggs are sold in over 200 Victorian supermarkets, supported by his innovative, eco-friendly solar-powered sheds. Passionate about education, he inspires school children with his entrepreneurial story and donates 5% of his eggs weekly to charities. Thank you for coming in today, Josh.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So you started a business at age 9. What inspired you to start so early?
I think that what's so interesting about this is if you look at it in hindsight, you go, oh my God, how could you start all of this at that? And it obviously doesn't start like that, not in any kind of meaningful way. At the beginning, my objective was very simple. I wanted to do something to make some pocket money. And sometimes when you have a good idea, you can kind of build from there.
Well, I think that the making the pocket money, that obviously is some sort of incentive from the parents, isn't it? So perhaps your parents have...
Yes. A little bit of a blame, if you could put it that way, can be attributed that way. I tried a great number of things to make pocket money when I was a kid, and I think that came from a lot of my parents not wanting to hold my hand too much in terms of, you know, how I make money, and if you want things, you've got to go out and get them. So I tried a great number of things that were unsuccessful. I tried baking pies, I tried doing cakes, I tried making jam, very difficult to make.
I don't know, hens and jam, I think the jams may be easier than the hens.
Well, I tell you what happened is I used to, to gather all the berries, it takes a lot of effort, right? Because you need a lot to get to jam. And then if you set it wrong, it won't set and it stays liquid. And so think about, if you have like a pot, think about how many berries that is.
Yes.
And then if you don't set it right for the whole thing, and you're 9 years old, you give up, like I did.
Oh, and that is intense. That is a lot of work.
So from there, I think that it was like, okay, well, what can I do that I can actually handle? And so we had chickens, and my mother said, hey, you take care of them, you can sell the eggs. And so I really jumped on that opportunity, started selling to neighbors, but of course, you know, that wasn't enough.
I have seen the cutest photo of you holding the hens on the packets. I'm sure the viewers today have actually seen Josh's Rainbow Eggs, because which supermarkets predominantly are you in?
So we're in all of the Coles in Victoria, and then we're in 65 of the Woolies that are kind of really best for our demographic. So that's really in Melbourne.
And this brand is so unique, and why is that? Tell people why they should buy your eggs. What do you do differently?
I think that for us, it's a lot about doing the difficult thing. And so if you look at the models of farming, it can be quite standard to look at things from a pure spreadsheet perspective and go, if we do this cost down and we do this thing up, and we kind of optimize everything away from hen health, away from prioritizing customers and towards, you know, generating revenue and having a cheaper product to make, then you'll get a worse product, in our opinion. We've invested heavily in ensuring the chickens have the best life possible. We've invested heavily in being transparent and making sure that the customers can see what we do out there every day. I like to think of customers almost like well, obviously not publicly traded, but I think of them as like shareholders almost, where I want them to see what we do, how I'm making their money worth it, right? I want them to feel good about the purchase they make. I want them to know that I'm doing the right thing, and I want them to trust us and the work we put in for them.
Now, you're doing so much more than that on the farm. It's eco-friendly as well. I've actually been to the farm and seen all of the beautiful dogs that run around and look after the chickens. Tell us a bit about that side of things.
So what we did is originally, and this is what happens when you try something new, is we are the first people to make a commercially viable hen moving, it's like a hen moving program, right? Essentially, our whole hypothesis, and this is what we've really based a lot of Josh's Rainbow Eggs around, is that the chicken should be not in the one space for too long.
Yes.
so that the grass can recover and that they can have that chicken experience. And so that meant that we tried a whole bunch of unsuccessful manners to make that happen. And this also means, however, that you don't set up the infrastructure in the same way. So if you have a chicken shed, you're building huge fences around that.
Right.
No foxes, you're watching them constantly. There's a lot that goes into that to make sure the chickens are safe. But if you're moving the chickens around, that means that you're going to have different infrastructure. So our sheds move, but also think about the other things that have to move. The shade, the fences, the water, whatever else.
Yeah.
And so the issue we ran into is that if you move a fence, you're never going to have it be big enough or strong enough to keep predators out.
Right.
And so how we solved that problem was we did something entirely unique at the time, which was use the Maremma sheepdogs for chickens, something that hadn't been done before us. And that was one of our key innovations early on.
And those sheepdogs are the cutest things I've ever seen.
Absolutely,
Oh,
they're
so
gorgeous.
cute. And I think now, going back to having 40 hens to now being in hundreds of supermarkets, what was that experience like? How did you get started going into supermarkets and then really scaling it next level?
Yeah, so I actually have been thinking about this a lot recently because I've been doing my master's applications. And so I think it was kind of really two different steps. So a lot early on, so I was managing director of Joshua Rainbow Eggs until about halfway through 2013. So that means that all of the independent supermarkets we picked up, Lamana Direct and Essendon Fields, which was a testing ground for us with our customers, those were all picked up by me personally. And so for me, a lot of it was going in there and doing the same thing we do with our customers, which is creating trust.
Yes.
Okay, they're going to do the right thing by us, they're going to take care of us, and our customers are going to enjoy their product. And so you can't just say these things. You have to action them. And so what I did was I would set up a little stand out front of one of these independent supermarkets, and I'd give out flyers. I'd talk to customers, I'd interface with the team, and I'd kind of bring people along with me in a way. So then when we had the opportunity to go to Coles and Woolies halfway through 2014, we used a lot of those same techniques in the first few stores we gathered to really build that buy-in and trust.
That is absolutely incredible. I'm sure no matter what business you touch, you will make successful, because the amount of detail that you go to not only just look after the customer, but actually the product and looking after the hens and the dogs and the environment by moving these sheds around. Everything that you touch is with so much consideration. That's incredible.
Thank you.
Well done. So what's been the biggest challenge for you in business to date?
So I'm somebody who doesn't tend to get too bogged down in challenges intellectually. I find that just dealing with them is enough. I tend not to really let it become my life.
Yeah.
So if I'm facing a challenge, what I'll do is I won't think about it. I'll be like, okay, I need to do these things. I'll plan it out. Then I'll be present and I'll fix the issue instead of getting bogged down in it mentally. It's just too much for me.
Yeah.
So that means, though, when I look back, the challenges kind of fade. The things that were really tough for us was really figuring out what growing the business would look like.
Yes.
What are the things we're willing or not willing to compromise on from a values perspective? What do we think our standards are? Why do we think our standards are important? What do we think our customers want from us, and what are the things that we're putting our heart and souls into that aren't actually as important for them?
Yeah.
This growth has been so iterative, and that means that there's been a lot of things that I thought were important to our customers that were left on the cutting room floor, and some things that I didn't care about as much that it turns out people are very interested in. I can give you an example of each. At the beginning, we were giving our chickens organic feed.
Yes.
Then we had an issue where I believe one of the farms had some problems, or maybe they just figured out how supply and demand works.
Yes.
There's only 3 organic chicken feed farms in Australia, and so they were charging like minimally more, and then they just were like, wait a second. Maybe one of them took an economics course, I don't know. And that just became non-viable for us economically. And I remember the first farmers market I went to after that, and the first customer I spoke to after that. And I was really nervous about this conversation because I thought that this was something that was a key part of our brand. That we didn't use the pesticides and the herbicides, and that we had an organic brand. We weren't accredited, but we were like well into the process.
Yeah.
And they didn't care at all.
Wow.
And I'm like, I thought this was a huge thing.
Yeah, the time, the money, the effort, and the customer is the person paying for it at the end. And if they don't value that,
then it's not real value. And I think that's something that the customers kind of really brought home for me that I didn't think about as much, was a lot of the stuff around me communicating my story to them is something they really care about. I'm not somebody who enjoys being front and center as much. I would typically prefer to work in the background. So customers being like, hey, I love hearing about this. I want to hear more. You should do more, do stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that.
Well done. So lastly, how do you balance everything? So you've got work at home, well, nearby home. Do you live on site?
No, it's about 15 minutes away.
Okay. Yeah. And then you've got your family and then friendships and social life, and particularly starting this so early. What's your secret?
So I think that along the way, it was very much about just planning things out properly. But then now more recently, I graduated last year in December. And so then this year I've stepped into, I was working full time last year, but now I'm working more.
Only a family business can do that, when you're the CEO.
So I think that so I'm actually COO right now.
COO.
Yeah, Tamsin CEO.
Yes.
So, I get back to your question though, which was about how I balance it. Honestly, it's really interesting because when you're one of two primary executives in a business, often the choice of balancing can really feel out of your hands.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong and you need to step in, there's no amount of scheduling that can save you. For example, halfway through this year, the grading room manager quit because we were going to bring somebody in above her and demote her to 2IC, leaving the pay the same, but effectively neutering her role. And she just same day quit.
Yeah.
And I had to step in and take that over. So what was so funny is that I was planning on moving to Melbourne. So I have an apartment in Melbourne that I'm only going to now. I'm only able to stay there on the weekends because during the week I'm running our production facility.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been very much about prioritizing my own time in minimal ways. But honestly, all I can think about is, I remember watching this lecture given by the managing director of JP Morgan, and he said, find half an hour a day to do something you care about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is it really that bad for everybody? And yes, it is. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just like carve out what precious time you can, figure out where your priorities lie, and accept that you're not going to get to everything you want.
And health. Do you have one thing that you do for your health that above all else?
Yeah, so I do work out every day.
Awesome. And that's good for physical and mental health, of course. So thank you so much, Josh.
No worries.
This is the Inspired CEO. We'll be back soon.